everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the vlog.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to jump right into our question because it's a meaty one. We're actually talking about virtues and virtue extremities today.
Mm-hmm.
Our question is, why did you keep virtue extremities in the game? Every time I've ever seen a virtue extremity in a game, it completely wrecks everything and just makes us knock that person out.
Okay, cool. Are you one of our players?
Yeah, that happens. Virtue extremities do that.
But I think most of our players like them.
When they don't hate them.
Right. But you may be dealing with virtue extremities in the same way that we do, and so that's cool. The important part about virtue extremities is that they are completely mythic. They're important to the mythic cycle. They happen. Hercules murders his entire family. Medea, in a fit of vengeance, murders her own children. Even though that's unthinkable, she does it. It's a complete loss of intellect in favor of your base emotions. And I think for many pantheons, even though the pantheons that have like harmony and piety, that's still their base emotions. They're just more solemn and different ways of thinking of things. Most of us are very Eurocentric, so we think in general, you probably think the Norse and the Greeks have the right set of virtues between
Except
them.
vengeance.
In some way. What?
Except vengeance.
What do you mean except vengeance?
Most of us in the modern day don't like vengeance anymore, right?
That's
unfair violence.
No, that's not true. Most of us in the Taken 2 just made like $1 billion goddamn dollars.
Alright. Virtue extremities are actually one of the things the book does that are really cool because it's a mechanic that directly does mirror myth. Because that's a major theme for a lot of mythologies and a lot of heroes is that sometimes they make really horrible choices because their emotions get the better of them. And it's something that, obviously, you're going to roleplay some of that, but virtues very specifically say these are the things in your culture that heroes traditionally go apeshit over. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's going to happen to you because you're part of that, and you're part of that mythic cycle and that idea. So it's not, they do mess up the game. They can suck. We had one last night, and it made life hard for everybody, but the thing is that they represent you actually embodying either because you did embody that virtue all the time, you're not extremiting, or if you try to say no to it and you extremity, you're forced to snap back into that thing. You're being, Hercules who's gone crazy, or you're being Medea who's normally would not murder her children, who couldn't possibly have thought of that, but because she's so angry and her vengeance is so activated by what her husband has done, she does it anyway.
It also gives you kind of an out to play your virtues where normally, even when you have an excellent group, if you're playing your virtues really strong, even if you have really high ones, sometimes you get from the other players that, come on man, can we just get the story going? Stop being a bitch about your virtues.
But when you
really
can say,
everyone.
Guys, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to courage extremity and ruin all of you.
Yeah.
Then they have to kind of deal with that. And it's not that you want to bully other players with it, but it does give you sometimes that this is an important part of my character. We're not going to just push it under the rug because it's inconvenient.
Because it's inconvenient or because it's not going to help the story along or because it's not on our main goal.
Yeah. And those things are things that, you're dealing with over the whole evolution of your character, and everybody's dealing with over the evolution of their character. It's not like harmony is something random that happens to Vivian sometimes that has nothing to do with her personality. It's something that is part of her, has always been part of her. And her party knows that you can't do stuff that ruins harmony because Vivian will go nuts. And,
and because we're in a kind of party setting here, oftentimes the rest of the group saves you. And that's slightly on the wrong side of mythic.
It's actually, you should usually be dying.
You should
at the
usually
end
be
of your
dying. Yeah, if you extremity, it should be
so, it is inconvenient when you're like, oh man, we gotta go, Nock goes out again because he's Valor extremity. But normally he would just kill himself and that'd be the end of his story. So you're getting to play a lot more because you're a PC than you would have if you were actually part of a mythic cycle usually.
I'm trying to think of a non-Greek, non-cuckoo lane.
Non-cuckoo lane.
Oh, when What's-His-Face freaks out in Japan about the vomit lady?
Yes, that would be a good example of a harmony extremity would be when Tsukuyomi sees Ukemochi creating food by vomiting up and says, that's not okay, I can't handle it, and just murders her.
Yep.
Like, that's not something he should have done. It ruined his entire life. He got banished from this pantheon, but he couldn't help himself.
But he saw it and he snapped the fuck out.
Yes. Or another good example is when Yama just goes apeshit across all of India, murdering the unjust. Like he sees one too many bad people coming to Naraka, and he's like, my order is just gone. I'm just going to murder bad people.
Apparently the world went to shit. I'm murdering everyone.
And those aren't good decisions for those people.
No.
They didn't want to do that. But it was important to them and their character. They couldn't help themselves from doing it.
Yeah.
And so, you're right, it's inconvenient in games sometimes, but it needs to be there. It's a really important part of the mythic canon that heroes have to deal with those kinds of things. And it's actually, even though it's inconvenient, it's also a lot of fun. It's really, I mean, we're inconvenienced by it, but the table pretty much, if somebody goes into extremity, we're laughing for the next couple of hours. Even when it's terrible and people are almost dead. Because you're getting to kind of do this whole larger-than-life thing that you wouldn't normally do, and you're kind of all bets are off, and all your strictures are off that you would normally have for role-playing. And you kind of are like, I'm going to embody my pantheon and my people's idea of what this thing is, and we're doing it now, and that's what's happening. And it becomes a major part of, and it can spawn major plots depending on what you do. It becomes an important part of the story, and it should be an important part of the story because that's what it is in myth.
Yeah. Couple things, though. I don't think the system is perfect. There are a few things I'd like to change. I think extremity could be better.
It's a little weird right now because it's very subjective about what is and isn't like shocking art.
Shocking, yeah, it's very subjective. I think a better extremity one would be you can't do anything until you finish a great work of art, like a massively timed, like the best thing you've ever made kind of piece.
You have to go out back in Venus de Milo.
Yeah, exactly. That I think that would fit a lot of the cultures that have expression better, and it would just kind of work better. And I've argued a lot about intellect virtue extremity.
I feel like it's reasonable because it kind of represents those people who can't move on from something until they have managed to, like their intellect is so strong that they can't move on from something until they've managed to internalize it and deal with it. Everything just shuts down while they just sit around and brain, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of intellect characters do anyway, normally. And
that's what they're doing when they're trying not to intellect extremity, too. They're just like, everybody stop back to think about this.
But it doesn't, there's no representation of more or less intelligence through that, like and the ability to actually figure things out and come to an answer. Because an intelligent character at some point, theoretically, should be able to be like, no, this is the right answer, and this is the right answer. And so that state of being of not having a right answer is kind of weird. I think, and it doesn't really represent the things that normally put you in intellect virtue extremity.
That's true. You go into intellect extremity because somebody is being willfully ignorant, or because some great important source of knowledge got destroyed, or something like that. And that making you just shut down and not do anything is kind of weird. Right.
I think a better one would be to make sure you start, and it would fit better with a lot of the characters in myth who are very heavily intellect. Like, okay, I got to stop and start contributing to my library of all the information I know. I have to, I have to flip out and go get a important relic I've never seen before. Go to a really dangerous place like in Startown.
Yes, last night Folkwater wanted to get into the library in the Axis of the Heavens, and everybody was like, no.
Everyone was like, no.
No.
So when Sangria Virtue Extremity, she got to do the thing that she wanted to do. And when Folkwater Intellect Extremity, he had, the extremity made him not do the thing he wanted to do, which seemed very contrary to it. Instead, he just shut down and he got up and he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm fine."
It's hard to.
And that wasn't his fault. That's just the mandate of the extremity, which I think it could be better. I think instead he could be like, "I'm going there. I'm risking my life. I am selling everyone down the river to get that information."
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile like intellect, which is a very internal thing, with the kind of external behaviors that virtue extremities tend to do. So that's something we talked about a lot. We're not sure about that yet.
I think endurance is a little vague. I think I could fix that. It's one of my projects. I have a lot of projects.
We have a lot of projects.
They'll probably be up on the poll at some point. I think they could all use a small tweak. I think they could all use, I think the pros and cons side, what would that be called? The names for it. The stuff you can do and the stuff you can't do. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, the requirements for what causes you to go into virtue extremity, what things you can do to avoid that.
Right. I think those could be better defined.
Yeah.
And then I think the extremities can be kind of solidified and streamlined. Not streamlined like taking the flavor out, but making them all have that same feeling. That same epic, I'm going nuts and really pumping my life into this virtue kind of feeling.
And some of them are a little mechanically haphazard right now too. Like this one lasts a day, this one lasts days.
Exactly. No, this one lasts an hour. Go. Yeah.
So that could be more uniform.
Mm-hmm. I think they could a lot be until a set time or until X accomplishment.
Yes.
I think making it accomplishment based would be more.
It would be. That would make it so that you could knock people out to stop them from doing it, but you probably shouldn't really be able to do that most of the time anyways. Like, that's completely counter to how Virtue Extremities work.
Right. The whole point of the Virtue to, like, let it go and...
Except for Valor. You just beat that person to the ground.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, thank you for my punishment. I think that's everything, though.
I think so. Virtue Extremities they do need an overhaul, but they're a really important part of the game. And they're one of the things that the original system did that is really great.
Yeah, it's one of the things that was really, really good. And I think, hey, just remember, when it happens in your game, sucks, but this is the time to make that part an amazing story instead of a side part of the story.
Instead of saying
make the extremity the part of the story. Yeah.
Instead of saying, well, what we were doing got fucked up, we're going to have a side trip where we have to deal with Sengra's duty extremity. Instead, make that part of the story. Make the person that's extremitying do things that are important that you need to do, not just whatever you think will most easily snap you out of it. And the other people react to that the way you would react to it if your friend started becoming homicidal next to you.
Right.
Don't just be like, oh, Virtue Extremity, somebody knock her out of character. That's not really going to be exciting for anyone. If you're doing that, of course you're bored and irritated by it.
Yeah. But if it's Virtue Extremity, well, she needs to go do this thing, then let her fucking do. If it's Medea, she's gonna go crazy with the vengeance. We're gonna leave.
We're gonna get out of the way of that. We're gonna not be there.
Yep. She murders her children.
We're gonna set some stuff up to deal with her afterwards, and she comes out of it.
Yep.
We're not gonna deal with that.
Yeah. Because if you just try to stop her and rein it in, that really just kind of feeds into the virtue again. So the next time it might be worse.
Yeah.
And then
you end up with the rolling Virtue Extremity situation, which we've had before, where somebody's in Virtue Extremity and somebody trips one of their other virtues, so they just roll into the next Virtue Extremity when they're done, and you don't want that. There was a time period where Sangria was in Extremity for like 2 months.
Yeah.
It was terrible for everyone. And that's what happens when you try to go against the grain of your own character constantly.
Yeah. One thing I do think is an important bit and can have a lot of difficulty is the PCs. I generally have started, after the first game, giving them a couple pantheons to choose from that have similar virtue spreads. Because when you get a very different virtue spread across them, things can get difficult. Things can get weird.
It is hard to run a passage at Scion next to a Dodecathion Scion because they don't agree on anything, and the things that one of them does are always going to trip the other one. Yeah. So you can't. It's very hard to run a lot of people who are heavy Harmony Order with a lot of people who are heavy Courage Vengeance. It's just difficult. Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, you have to go into the story knowing this is going to kind of be a story about the differences.
Yeah, it's going to be about those people trying to deal with each other and finding a way that they can tell their story and work together while kind of hating what each other stand for.
Yeah.
So.
And if you just do it haphazardly and you end up with, a bunch of people whose virtues don't mesh, by the time you get to Demigod, they're going to kind of start murdering each other. And then it becomes a chore to kind of make them not murder each other, which always sucks. Yeah.
And, you can always do things that kind of play to their virtues. As a storyteller, if you see that happening a lot, give them opportunities to fulfill their virtues. Mm-hmm. And, maybe opportunities where they fulfill their virtue in a way that shows it as in a good light to the rest of the party. Like, normally, we all have courage and we think the guy with valor is stupid because he always wants to go run out and save civilians. But if you set up a situation where he does that and it's a really cool story and it's a really good thing for everybody, they may start to, in character, start to see kind of the virtue of valor a little bit. And if you do some of that, that can sometimes help them in character reconcile those things. It won't always be perfect. They're always going to clash. But you can do that a little if you see that the players are struggling and they're really having trouble doing it themselves.
And the other thing is, if the players are struggling, just kind of give them a little slap and be like, tomorrow it'll be you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so don't be a bitch to the person that's freaking out, because tomorrow you're going to freak out and you'll be like, please, someone help me.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to be, you're going to be mad about it happening now, especially if it's ruining something that you were doing, but you wouldn't want them tomorrow to be like, well, I'm just going to let you go kill yourself because you didn't want to with me. It's, as most party situations, it's kind of everybody has to deal with that together. Yeah. Otherwise, you would be running solo anyways. Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that's everything.
I think that is everything. Virtue Extremities are great. They're awesome. We love them.
Yes.
Yes. Play them all the time.
Yeah. And, just make sure you get some willpower. Just remind the rest of the group,
Yeah. Where's your charisma guy?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. See you guys next time.
Later.